listening to and streaming the Tavis Smiley Show. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai, here with Joanne Reid, host of the Joanne Reid Show on YouTube. And if you're not following her on Substack, go ahead and bless yourself. Go ahead and bless yourself. Just go ahead and do it. It is required reading for a time that we are living in, such as this. Go to joyandreid.com for more information. But Joy, look, we were just talking about the Harlem Renaissance, that period of time, which was a mixed bag for our people back then, no different from the mixed bag that we are currently experiencing. You were just talking about the loss of confidence that we've had in the courts and how we were watching the federal government be turned against us. Talk to us about this declaration of war on Black voters. There are a number of folks out there that may find themselves in a state of paralysis, may be feeling so overwhelmed in this moment and don't know what to do. What say you to them?
Well, I mean, again, if you lean on history, it was not a president that stripped Black folks of our humanity during the enslavement era. It was the Supreme Court. It was the Taney Court that ruled in Plessy versus Ferguson that Black men and women could not be citizens, that they were not citizens. That was not corrected until, and that was about, a decade or so before the Civil War. And that was not corrected until the Reconstruction Amendments, the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments. And those were not enforced. Even though they were passed in 1865, they weren't enforced until 1955, until 1954, Brown versus Board of Education. And then it took really 100 years from the passage of the 15th Amendment, which was supposed to give Black men at the time the right to vote. That didn't really even get enforced until, 1965, right? The Voting Rights Act. So it took, until 1954 to enforce the 14th Amendment. And it took from 1965 to enforce the 15th Amendment. So the courts have always had a disproportionate sway in the question of whether Black people have any rights of citizenship in this country. And so it is a sad reality that we have another Taney Court. It's why, I don't know who the Jim was in Jim Crow, but I know who John Roberts is. And
Hello.
I know that and I know that he's responsible for eviscerating the Voting Rights Act. And it's been his life's work since he was a 26-year-old staffer in the Reagan Justice Department. So I know that this is a John Crow era, just as our grandparents lived in a Jim Crow era. And so we've entered the John Crow era because of the same entity that did Plessy, the court, the Supreme Court. And the thing about this court, the Roberts Court, even though, yes, I know Alito, wrote the decision that gutted the Voting Rights Act, but it was like an alley-oop, because John Roberts wrote the decision that Eric Holder does not like us calling. He hates it when you call that Shelby versus Holder. Mm-hmm. He says, just call it Shelby, right? So we're going to say the just call it Shelby decision in 2013 is when Roberts got his first crack at gutting and killing the Voting Rights Act, which again is his life's dream. Mm-hmm. And then he's very strategic about assigning Alito to be the hitman when he wants to kill something. And so people are like, Alito's the bad guy. John Roberts is the guy you can take to a cocktail party. But he assigns the rulings. And so his favorite hitman is Alito, because everyone knows Alito is mean and Alito is angry about modernity and he hates the modern world. So he assigned him to go ahead and kill Roe v. Wade. And he assigned him, which was his life's dream, to go ahead and kill the Voting Rights Act. But let's just be clear, this is John Roberts' doing. And so, when we look at losing the Voting Rights Act, you have to remember, this isn't just gutting a law that was passed that was signed by the president in 1965, Lyndon Johnson. This is gutting the 15th Amendment. Mm-hmm. Their real target is not the Voting Rights Act. It's the 15th Amendment. It's the 14th Amendment. Ultimately, it's the 13th Amendment. It is Reconstruction itself, which has always been the goal of the Confederacy. The Confederates fought to keep us enslaved permanently. The Reconstruction and those Reconstruction amendments formally made us citizens, and they've been mad about it ever since. And John Roberts is simply a redeemer. He's one of these redemption, he's just a more urbane version of it. But these people don't want us to have rights, because if we have rights, we can vote to hold them accountable. And the last thing you want, if you're John Roberts and your wife has cleared at least $10 million in income for your family based on your job as Chief Justice, and if there's an ethics complaint sitting on the desk of the House Judiciary Committee that the Republicans won't act on, but Democrats would, if you're sitting next to Sam Alito, who has accepted millions of dollars or an unknown amount of gifts from billionaires who have business for the court, if you're sitting next to Clarence Thomas, who's the most kept man in America based on the number of billionaires upon whom his largesse depends, he gets an RV from them, fancy trips, fancy things, the things he's craved since he graduated from Yale Law School and felt like he didn't get his due. And he's an ethical nightmare. And you know that the Democrats would investigate Clarence Thomas, or might even impeach him, or might even impeach you. If you guys are an ethical nightmare, if you knew Amy Coney Barrett's husband has profited immensely in the millions of dollars from her seat on the court, representing people who may have business before the court, if these ethical nightmares, Ginny Thomas, Clarence Thomas's wife, maybe being an active insurrectionist, who's going to check them, boo? A Congress run by the other party. And so John Roberts, the ethical quandary is literally in the rulings. They have to keep a Republican Congress permanently in order to protect themselves, not just Trump, not just the Republicans who are profiting off the war, or the Democrats, John Fetterman, looking at you. There is a lot of grift and graft and maybe crime taking place on Capitol Hill. And the Supreme Court has become the security agency that unethical people hired to protect them from investigations. So we shouldn't think this is personal. It's not just it's not that they hate Black people. I don't know how they feel about Black people. But they know that Black people are the most consistent voters for the other party, and they cannot allow the other party to take over Congress. That's why it's happening.
By any means necessary. And that's why we see folks they are really carrying on. They are pulling out all the stops. But it's still, in light of that, Virginia Democrats are asking the Supreme Court to reinstate these congressional maps that were struck down by the High Court. Sources reporting that Virginia Democrats asked the Supreme Court on Monday to restore its new voter-approved congressional maps that aim to give Democrats an edge in the upcoming midterm election, just days after it was blocked by the U.S. Supreme Court. Talk us through the theater of this, because we already know that the U.S. Supreme Court ain't checking for our voting rights, right? And so why are Virginia Democrats taking this to the same court?
Well, no, they're taking it to the U.S. Supreme Court. It was the Virginia Supreme Court that ruled that the voter-approved gerrymander was unconstitutional per the Virginia Constitution. So there's been no ruling on the U.S. Constitution, but all the Virginia Democrats are asking is for John Roberts to be consistent. John Roberts said, you can't use race to gerrymander, but you can do political gerrymandering. In fact, you can do political gerrymandering even in a non-census year. So he said, forget the whole tradition for like hundreds of years that you only gerrymander after census. We'll let that go because we need that Republican Congress. Go ahead and gerrymander. As long as you don't actively scream the N-word while you're doing it, and it's not clear that it's racist, that race is being used, you can do it. You can't even protect Black voters using race. No race allowed, just politics. Well, the Virginia gerrymander was strictly political. On its face, it says, we need to respond to Donald Trump demanding that Texas do what really was a racial gerrymander in order to steal seats in Texas. We're going to respond to that, and we're going to gerrymander politically in the state of Virginia. Very clear. So if John Roberts is consistent, he's going to have to say, that's okay. Now, let's see if he's consistent. I don't expect him to be, but I am very interested to watch him twist in the wind to try to pretzel himself into explaining why it's okay for Alabama. They just expedited letting Alabama do it. They just expedited letting Louisiana do it. They're expediting letting red states do it. But this now blue state says we want to do it. If they say no, then John Roberts will have completely exposed himself. He backed himself into his own corner, because all that Virginia Democrats are asking for is for the exact same ruling Texas got, Louisiana got, and Alabama got. What's the difference? There isn't one.
Well, speaking of folks that are twisting in the wind, Joy, the DNC, they over there wringing their hands because pressure is mounting on the Democratic National Committee to disclose its 2024 election postmortem, which even former Vice President Kamala Harris is urging the party to do so despite the risk of embarrassment. Is this something that is absolutely essential in order for Democrats to be able to move forward with some sort of unity this election cycle, or does this run the risk of becoming a sideshow from the main thing?
I think in some ways it's a sideshow. I mean, first of all, why would you pay all that money to do an autopsy and not release it? It scandalizes the DNC, which I think has been a scandalized entity for a while, in that it's very ineffective and useless. If you're going to do the autopsy, just release it. What are you hiding it from? The only reason I could see that they're hiding it is one of two reasons. Either they're afraid of AIPAC, because what's in that autopsy is that the Harris campaign not being able to accept that there's a genocide being committed by Israel. I can see AIPAC reading that in the report and saying, you can't release that, or we'll punish everybody, defund everybody. So it could be a fear of AIPAC, or that report exposes the absolute incompetence and effectively grift of a group of white political consultants who've been getting rich off of losing campaigns, particularly losing campaigns led by Black candidates for decades. They've been screwing up elections. They do not know how to elect Black people, but they keep jumping in and ruining Black-led campaigns, messing up, and still getting paid. It would expose the fact that they're running a game where they get to get all this money for placing TV ads that don't help you win elections, that they are ignoring independent media that could help you win elections, and that they don't know what they're doing. But they're getting paid so much money, they don't want to end the grip. So it's one of those two. It's either AIPAC or it's the consultants that don't want that report out. And either way, Ken Martin should be embarrassed if he's holding it back, and whoever's holding it back should resign.
Joy, in our remaining minutes, I know on your show, you have often framed some of the criticism here in California around the governor's race in very clear terms, warning that control of California really is to the Democratic electoral success. We know that the California Democrats failed to properly vet the gubernatorial field, allowing possibly two Republican candidates to make it out of this primary election. I've spoken to pollsters as recently as this week, and Steve Hilton is still sitting at the top of the list. The candidate, the former Fox News host, has been endorsed by Donald Trump, whose disapproval rating is sitting at about 70%. Yeah, he's sitting at the top of the polls in California. What's your message? What's your message to Democrats in California? And what is it that you think that Becerra and Steyer have to do to at least battle it out well into November?
First of all, Dr. D, can we just meditate for just one moment on the fact that in the most populous state in the union, a state of 39 million souls that has Hollywood and Silicon Valley, farmland and military bases, has everything to be its own nation, and likely the most talented humans on the planet, y'all couldn't find one good Democrat who could be governor? Really? just as a casting. Don't y'all have casting directors in California, in Hollywood? They could have found it. First of all, I didn't get my dream, which was Kamala running for governor. I promise you, it's not her dream, it's mine. And I have to retain that in my own self and hold that in me, that my dream was that she would swoop in after the implosion of the man who shall not be named, who was like literally on my show 48 hours before he imploded. I had no idea. I've had that man on shows on MSNBC for years, had no idea. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, nobody vetted him. I mean, it wasn't my job to vet him. I just put him on TV to talk. But anyway, the fact that happened, the fact that the Pelosi camp had no idea, no one had any idea that man had those problems. You let him become the top non-Republican candidate in the list. Y'all didn't have a plan B. Really? California Democratic Party? What do you do all day? So I'm really embarrassed for the Democratic Party nationally and in the state of California. Where is the vaunted Pelosi machine? Fix it. Y'all pick one of them and don't let this Republican become the governor of our most populous and, after New York, most important state. You're telling me that you would put a Republican in charge of the state where, if you wanted to performatively deport the most Latinos, that's where they are? Where if you wanted to performatively remove protections from immigrants that are brown or that are Asian, that there are a lot more Asian people than Black people in California. Yeah. This is a gold mine for the right. Tom Homan would do a dance naked in the streets. He would be so thrilled if he could get his little grimy little hands on California and take all those Asians and all those Black people and just dog walk them. How dared California be this much of a failure? So I'm embarrassed for your state. I love California. I have one child who lives there. My son lives there, and I'm sad about it. And I genuinely pray that California voters don't let a Republican run that state. It's too important a state to put in the hands of MAGA.
We'll have to leave it there. Our thanks to Joy-Ann Reid. Go to joyannreid.com to tap in to the Joy-Ann Reid Show on YouTube. Follow her on Substack. Again, it will bless you, and it will help to ground you and tether you in news and information that you can trust. Can't thank you enough for joining us here, Joy.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nee. Can I say one thing before I go? And I appreciate all of the shouts out. We're trying to get to 500,000 subscribers on YouTube. So if you have the opportunity, in addition to going to joyannreid.com, which is my Substack, please go to thejoyreidshow.com, hit subscribe and hit share. Let people know we're clawing our way to 500,000 subscribers. We're excited. We just want a Webby, but we could do more. So we're just trying to make it big. So thank you for letting me do that little pitch.
Thank you. You're listening to and streaming the Tavis. You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai, and you might remember that earlier in the hour, we were talking about what we thought of as sort of a profile in courage. When we were doing our national news roundup, there was a story that was coming out of South Carolina that caught my attention, and I think should capture the attention of all of us. I was talking about how a South Carolina Republican is actually defying Trump's demands for redistricting. For folks who may be less familiar, as Republicans are scrambling to redraw key districts after the U.S. Supreme Court rendered ineffective a major section of the civil rights law that prevented racial discrimination. State Senator Shane Massey, the Republican majority leader in South Carolina, in the Senate, he argued in an extraordinary address that doing so would be against the interest of his state. Very different from how Republicans are behaving in Tennessee. Very different from how Republicans are behaving in Louisiana. Very different from how we see Republicans behaving in a lot of other places. But I have a little additional information from a very trusted source that really sort of helping me to understand the different scenarios that could play out. And I think this could be helpful for the folks that are tapped in, our leaders, learners, and listeners, and organizers, might I add. This source had shared with me that they weren't surprised that Senator Massey sort of held his ground. This individual suspected that he would, and was actually amazed that there were others that stood with him. But this source cautioned me, and was really cautioning all of us to not pop the champagne too quickly, because we are not out of the woods. The question is whether Trump will pressure Governor McMaster to call a special session. Governor McMaster, is one of the longest serving governors of South Carolina. And he's one of the longest serving governors in the history of South Carolina. You know why? Because of Donald Trump. And he has indicated that he won't call a special session. But Trump ain't going to take no for an answer. Trump ain't going to take no for an answer. And so, yes, this is a victory today, and we should celebrate the little victories along the way. But again, we are not out of the woods. We won today because we need a super majority to add it to the agenda. But if a special session is called by the governor of South Carolina, then guess what? Only a simple majority is necessary. It's also worth noting that the Republican House could play tricks with the budget and try and force the governor into calling a special session. And so this all is quite possible. But this is when organizers get to work and roll up their sleeves and fight. And I want to remind people, that folks are going to Georgia to fight. People are going to Alabama to fight. People are going to Louisiana to fight. People are on the ground in Tennessee right now fighting back. And we don't have to accept what's happening as just inevitable. We don't got to do that. We don't have to do that. And so, I want to remind folks of the agency that we have. I want to remind folks where you're invited to be in mass. In mass is as the weekend is right around the corner. Look, Supreme Court got rid of the Voting Rights Act. They sided with white nationalists who are working overtime to eliminate Black power in the South. You could, I'm sure, glean from the conversation I just had with Joy Reid. That's exactly what's happening. But guess what else is happening? On Saturday, May 16th, our community will respond with the All Roads Leads to the South. At 1 p.m. in Montgomery, Alabama, you can go to allroadsleadtothesouth.com to sign up to tap in, right? This is an all hands on deck moment. You just heard what Joy Reid said about the upcoming election here in California, and how there are folks in other parts of the country, other parts of the world, that shudder at the possibility of a MAGA Republican governor of this state. Make no mistake about it, we're not just talking about folks that are upset because we've torn down the Confederate flag. We're not just talking about folks who are upset and animated because we have taken down a Confederate statue. We're talking about people who are motivated to return the Confederacy. They want to bring back the Confederacy. That is what is afoot right here. That is what's on the line right here. That's why we cannot sit it out. And so again, you got to sign up today at allroadsleadtothesouth.com to participate in the Montgomery activation or a satellite action. There'll be satellite actions taking place across the country. And so know that. But also know that, again, we have years of collective progress that is on the line. You've heard me talk on air and off air quite a bit about my grandparents, my maternal grandparents, Addie Mae Thomas and Dave Thomas. These were working class folks. My grandmother was a domestic worker before she got a really good job working for Tropicana Orange Juice in Bradenton, Florida. And I remember as I was going through the process of writing the book, Kamala, the Motherland and Me, I remember having a conversation with my mom. And I remember my mom sharing with me that my grandparents were in their 40s when they voted for the first time right here in the United States of America. And I continue to be mind blown at that family history, which may not be all that different from your family history. Mind blown that they had to exist here in the United States in some way, shape, or form, but they couldn't fully participate in the governance of the United States. They couldn't decide who was going to be the next governor, who's going to be the next mayor, who's going to be on their city council. They couldn't decide at the ballot who was going to be on their school board or who needed to go for half of their lives. More than half of his life, we're talking about my grandfather who died when he was 65. So imagine for most of your life, you don't get to participate. And what is at stake is a return to that. A return to that. Wouldn't it be a shame if our kids and grandkids, if their ability to fully participate in this country at the ballot box, wouldn't it be a shame if their participation was as limited as our grandparents? That's what's at stake. And so, I've got to remind you again and again and again that they're trying to erase our hard-won gains. But what we got to do is understand our power. When we talk about Black power equals Black representation everywhere from city council to Congress. And this shapes who gets hired as teachers, who gets hired as police officers, which neighborhoods receive investment, and whose concerns are taken seriously by those in power. So when I think of Black power, that's what I think about. When I think of Black power in the state legislature, I think Black power in the state legislature equals police policy and criminal justice. When we're talking about use of force laws, when we're talking about qualified immunity, when we're talking about sentencing guidelines and prison funding, that all flows from state capitals. Black legislators have historically been the loudest voices pushing back on policies that criminalize Black communities. Now I know because so many of them join me right here on these airwaves to talk about it. Black power, when I think of Black power on school boards, and let me just say, I started my career right here in Los Angeles as a field deputy and press secretary for an LA school board member. When I think of Black power on school boards, I think of the folks who teach our kids. I think of how the board composition, how that shapes hiring criteria, how that shapes curriculum, how that shapes discipline policies, how it shapes how schools are funded within a district. A school board that doesn't reflect a community can systematically underfund or over police Black students. That is what's at stake. And so I implore you to find a way to show up on Saturday, either in Montgomery or some satellite location, and know that this is the beginning and not the end. That Saturday is the first of many actions that we're going to take to protect our power, but you got to register and you got to be present. And so all roads lead to the south.com. Please check it out. Again, there are lots of ways to tap in, but the first step you take is going to be going to that website to register. That's the first step. All right. And so we're going to be talking more and more and more about that. But before we go, there was a little bit of breaking news coming out of Georgia related to the Secretary of State. You know, the Secretary of State that Trump was trying to get, I think it was 10,000 or 11,000 votes in Georgia. Remember that? Well, he is in the news. And I wanted to share that with you, but I don't seem to see it in front of me. And so I want to encourage each and every one of you to be gentle with yourself. I started my day today with a conversation with Dr. Robin L. Smith. She is co-author of the book Invisible Ache. She co-authored that along with Courtney B. Vance. We'll be sharing that conversation with you in short order. But there were so many gems that she dropped on that call. But you know, one of the things that really stood out to me is when she said, you don't need to preach freedom. You need to live it. You know, we tend to respond well to people that are demonstrating what freedom looks like, what joy looks like, what resilience looks like. Don't tell me about it. You can show me better than you can tell me. And that's just one of the many gems I'm taking away from the conversation that started my day right here on KBLA when I was filling in for Tavis Smiley. And so I want to pass that along to you. And I want to encourage each and every one of you, as I do every day, don't panic. You don't make the best decisions when you're panicked. You don't show up in your fullness when you panic. Don't panic. Organize. Do what you can from where you are with what you have, but by all means, do something. I want to thank the entire village that helps us produce a more perfect union each and every day. This show doesn't happen by itself. And as much as we have a lot of muscle memory around here, we're not on autopilot. And so my thanks to our executive producer, Tavis Smiley, to our sound engineer, Brother Andy, to our show producers, Faraji Muhammad, Art Sears, and our social media guy, Amir Black. We appreciate you. And to each and every one of you, all of our leaders, learners, and listeners, we curate this show every single day with you in mind. We hope that you feel fed by it. We hope that we haven't overwhelmed you. We hope that you've got a dose of hope, a dose of inspiration, and that you'll come back again tomorrow. You've been listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai saying take care of yourself and take care of one another.